Digital threats are everywhere. Heretics, rogue techno adepts, corrupted networks, all ready to invade your system, steal your data, or worse. But with today's video partner NordVPN, you can stay one Titan-sized step ahead. With just one click, NordVPN secures your connection, encrypting your data and keeping your online activity safe from prying eyes. Fast, reliable, and easy to use, NordVPN ensures your privacy and protection every time you connect. Annoying ads? Gone. Suspicious downloads? Check for malware automatically thanks to NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro. Plus, with NordVPN's Dark Web Monitor, you'll be alerted if your credentials are compromised or if your information is shared in online hacker forums. With 24/7 support, a 30-day money-back guarantee, and protection for up to 10 devices, NordVPN truly has your back online. So head to nordvpn.com/dystopianchimp for an extra 4 months when you lock in a 2-year plan, or simply click the link in the description to access this exclusive offer. Stay protected, stay secure, stay safe, my chimplings. Now let's start the video. The tang of freshly spilled blood fills the air, sharp and metallic. Your ears are ringing, a high-pitched whine drilling into your skull. Your vision swims, the world around you blurring into a haze of misty shapes and shadows. You can't think. You're on your knees, the cold corroded metal of the floor biting into your skin through the thin fabric of your colours. Your hands are slick with blood, warm and wet. Whose blood? Yours? Or his? Your eyes refocus, the haze lifting just enough for you to see what you're holding. No, who you're holding. The man in your arms is dark-skinned, his chest heaving with quick, shallow breaths. His eyes, wide and glassy, stare up at the rusted pipes crisscrossing the cavernous space above. His breath rattles in his throat and blood bubbles from his mouth, spilling over his lips and staining his teeth. The shot that tore through him left a ragged wound so large and so ugly that you can't bear to look at it. But you know it's there, and you also know that this man is going to die. V's. His voice is a wet whisper, barely audible over the deafening ringing in your ears. Blood froths at the corner of his mouth as he tries to speak. It ain't, I didn't. But whatever he's trying to say is lost as his body convulses and begins to violently shake. His eyes, covered in bright electudes of writhing blue-green serpents, roll back into his head. You want to say something, anything, but your mouth won't work. Your throat is tight, your tongue heavy. His grip on your arm slackens, and the weight of his body grows heavier in your arms as the last of his breath wheezes out from his blood-filled lungs. You stare at him. Time stops. The ringing grows louder. Then suddenly, the intense whine that fills your head shatters in an instant, replaced by the sharp cracks of gunfire and las bolts tearing through the air. Your head snaps up, instincts kicking in, and you suddenly realize that you're moving. No, you're sprinting. Fast, sprinting through the chaos of exchanging gunfire, faster than you'd ever moved before. The world blurs again, but this time with speed, not shock. You're charging towards a man of sorts. He is tall, his posture hunched, his low-hanging arms carrying a smoking autogun, his barrel glowing hot. But it's his face that draws your eye. Pale skin smeared with oil and grime, dark hair matted into uneven clumps that sprout from his shoulders and neck like some poor imitation of fur. His mouth hangs open, revealing a broken picket fence of blackened fang-like teeth, and as he sees you move towards him, that broken maw twists into a grin. His armor, if it could be called that, is a patchwork of rags, scrap metal, and bones, some human, some not, crudely lashed together and still stained with old blood. You don't care. You're not even thinking. All you know is that your legs are moving and that your throat is raw from screaming. His wild, feral eyes lock onto yours, and that grin of his widens as he raises his autogun, the movement almost lazy, as if he's savouring the moment. He pulls the trigger, and the weapon bucks in his hand, but his aim is wide. The shot whistles past your ear and slams into a crate behind you, sending shards of rusted metal skittering across the floor. His eyes widen in the brief instant before you slam into him, the force sending you both crashing into a stack of cargo crates. The collision bursts them open, spilling their contents, pristine Militarum Type H rations, the very prize you came to steal. Your world becomes noise and pain and rage. Everything is chaos. Someone is shouting your name, but it's lost in the storm of your anger. A knife is in your hand. When did you grab it? And you're plunging it into him again and again, the blade rising and falling in a blur. Once, twice, a dozen times, bony clawed fingers, more like talons, claw at your face, trying to gouge out your eyes, but you twist away and keep plunging the knife down again and again. The man's face becomes a pulpy ruin, a mess of blood and bone and meat. Blood splatters across your face, hot and sticky, mingling with the sweat and grime already there. It's everywhere. It's staining your hands, your clothes, the ground beneath you. You wrench the knife back, ready to drive it into the ruined flesh again, but the pitted blade catches on something buried deep in his chest, some augmentation maybe, and with a brittle snap the blade shears off, leaving you holding a worthless hilt. You don't care. Tossing it aside, you rear back, balling your fist for a strike that'll crush whatever's left of the freak's face. But before you can hit, something clamps around your cocked arm and drags you backward. You'd shout out and twist around, ready to kill whoever dared pull you away. Viso! The voice is sharp, urgent, it's familiar. You blink, the blood in your eyes stinging and turning everything red. A woman is in your face, eyes wild, streaked with grime and sweat. "We need to get out of here," she shouts, her voice raw. "We're done. We have to move right now." Her rifle is clutched tight in her hands, the barrel patched with crude welds and sloppy repairs. You blink hard, clearing your vision, and nod. Nima. That's her name. Nima. The Simia are close, they are everywhere, moving in from every direction, their primal shouts and screeches echoing off the rusted walls of the cargo bay. You wrench yourself free from Nima's grip and fumble for your stub gun, your fingers slick with blood and trembling uncontrollably. You steal a glance behind you. You see Frug's hulking frame crouched behind a massive cargo crate, his tattooed muscles bulging as he slams fresh shells into his shotgun. The weapon gleams with oily smoke. The boy's been busy, clearly. To his left, CBT-81, that beautiful bionic monster, spews out massive burning jets of promethium from its mechanized arms, creating a wall of flame that's evidently the only thing keeping the Simia from overrunning you all. But it won't hold them off for long. There are too many of them. Far too many to fight off, even if Rank was still alive. You have to run. "Frug! Big man! Cover us!" you shout over the noise, glancing back at your massive pal. Frug is truly a mountain of a man, his massive frame dotted with crude armor plates and scars that do little to hide his swollen bulk. He grunts loudly in response and begins to laugh himself, raising his absurdly oversized shotgun and letting loose a series of deafening blasts that turn two of the Simia into clouds of red mist and force the rest behind cover. "Quickly now," you hiss to Nima. You both break from cover, firing wildly behind you, the shots echoing loudly with each pull of the trigger. Frug's shells roar through the air, and he laughs loudly with simple glee. But as his shotgun roars, so too does the Simia's return fire. A hail of bullets ricochet off cargo crates, deck plating, and metal walls alike. One of them finding its mark in Frug's exposed throat. His hearty laughter suddenly turns into a wet, gurgling choke as he staggers backward, dropping his weapon and clutching his throat as blood spurts between his massive gnarled fingers. He drops to his knees, eyes wide with shock, before collapsing with a heavy thud, the life snuffed out of him in an instant. Your heart lurches in your chest as you watch Frug fall, and rage burns inside of you once more. But this time, the rage is mixed with something darker, something that hollows you out from the inside. You stop dead in your tracks, unable to tear your eyes away from Frug's still warm body. But Nima's hand grabs the back of your jacket, jerking you backwards with a force that almost knocks you off your feet. "Keep moving, for throne's sake! The slab is dead! We can't stay here!" You swear loudly and turn with her to continue the running retreat. Bullets whistle past, some close enough that you feel the heat of their passing, but you keep running, lungs burning, legs screaming. Eventually you reach a mound of rubble and industrial waste, and you dive behind it, gasping for breath. And that's when you realize, by the throne, where is your CBT? You peer over the jagged mound of shattered rockcrete and rusted metal. The servitor is a twisted, smoking ruin. Its head has been blown off, leaving only a ragged stump of sparking wires, while its chest, too, is a mangled mess, riddled with gaping, glowing holes. But even in death, intentional or not, CBT's final act is one of service. Its massive arms, still thankfully attached to the wreckage of its body, continues to spew uncontrolled jets of flame. The fire illuminates the space, casting flickering shadows and revealing the smouldering bodies strewn around its feet. Burning promethium drips from its arms in slow droplets, sizzling and splattering onto the corpses and clinging to their oil-stained rags and dry hair, spreading with a greedy hunger as it consumes everything in its path. As you watch, the remains of CBT erupt into a full-blown inferno, the flames climbing higher, turning the dead servitor into an unexpected funeral pyre. A final, fitting end. "Move!" Nima shouts once again, her voice cutting through the numb shock that grips you. The urgency in her tone jolts you back to the present. You tear your gaze away from the blazing wreckage and continue running, the searing heat of CBT's cremation scorching your back as you run. You burst through a corroded door, your shoulder slamming into the rusted metal, and stumble into a huge chamber that stretches out before you like an industrial abyss. Massive twisted machinery looms overhead, and pipes heavy with corrosion and grime snake across the walls, dripping a sickly green sludge that pools in stagnant puddles on the floor. The air here is thick and foul, choked with steam and the sharp bite of toxic chemicals. You keep running. Gunfire, high-pitched laughter, and the shrieks of the Simia echo behind you, growing louder as they give chase through this maze of rusted steel and crumbling rockcrete. "Through here!" Numa shouts, pointing to a narrow passageway that disappears into the darkness. You don't hesitate, following her lead as you plunge deeper into the bowels of the hive. Together, you crawl through ventilation ducts, you scale up abandoned lifter shafts, you dart across crumbling gantries and through decrepit factoria and storage houses. Before long, you find yourself in a tunnel system that twists and turns like the insides of some great beast. The darkness here is almost total, the only light emanating from the faint glow of luminescent fungi that cling to the ceiling. It's easy to get lost down here. Very easy. But the Simia are somehow still close. You can hear their screeches echoing through the tunnels, distorted and amplified by the rockcrete walls. Your mind races, trying to make sense of this, trying to plot a route back to the hideout. But you have no idea where you are, and something isn't right. The Simia have been too fast, too coordinated, too persistent. And now that you think about it, they seem to know exactly where to find your crew in the first place. After all, you barely had time to touch the first crate before the gunfire erupted and rank was hit. You slow your pace, your stomach tightening with growing unease. You glance over at Nima, walking beside you in the gloom. There's something about her. Something in her eyes, maybe. Something that doesn't sit right with you. "Nima," you say, trying to keep your voice steady. How did they know? Why were there so many of the carking rats?" She slows her pace but doesn't look at you, her gaze remaining fixed ahead. "Doesn't matter. There's no time for this now. Let's just get our heads right." The seed of doubt starts to grow in your mind. burrowing deep. Your thoughts race, piecing together the clues, the strange looks, the arguments with Rank, and then it hits you like a punch to the gut. Nima had been the one who tried to change Rank's plans. She was the one who suggested bringing Frug and CBT along for backup, pushing for it, even when you and Rank agreed it was completely unnecessary. Why the insistence on dragging the whole crew into this? Why not stick to the tried and true formula of just you and Rank? Was she jealous? It's her insistence on coming along too, despite Rank's clear, if desperate, reluctance. Rank had been adamant that she stay behind, that it was a job for just the two of you. He had tried to stop her and the boys from coming, hadn't he? But no, Nima refused, and now they are all dead. Because of her. It must have been Nima, the dirty, traitorous bitch, always with her plans, always pushing for things to go her way. She'll pay for this. Rank was right to be worried about her coming. She was always too bloody headstrong. You grip your stub gun tighter and you flex your arm, ready to raise it. But you stop yourself. You can't risk it. They'll hear the shot. The Simia are too close. You tuck it back into your jacket. "Come on, this way," Nima says distractedly, her voice barely above a whisper. She slings her rifle over her shoulder, her movements jittery as she heads toward what looks like an old maintenance ladder half hidden in the gloom. It's the only way out of these stinking tunnels, leading up through an enormous furnace stack and hopefully onto the upper walkways. "I'm going first," you hiss, and push past her before beginning the climb. Minutes pass and you've climbed some 50 meters, but then you hear it, the sound of footsteps echoing from below. You glance down and see them. Simia, a handful of the feral freaks gathering at the base of the ladder, their forms warped by the rising heat. The ladder begins to groan loudly, and suddenly Nima cries out, a sharp, desperate sound that almost makes you lose your grip. Her boot has broken through a rusted rung, the decaying metal giving way beneath her weight. She dangles there, her hands gripping the greasy rungs, her boot scrabbling for a foothold that isn't there. Her eyes lock onto yours, wide with fear as she looks up at you. Time slows once more, and you see her fingers begin to slip as if in slow motion, the greasy metal offering no purchase. For a moment, you reach out, instinct taking over, ready to grab her hand and pull her up to safety. But then, the realization hits you again. She betrayed you. She sold you out. She sold the crew out. Your hand hesitates, then pulls back, gripping the ladder tighter instead. Nima's eyes widen in shock, or maybe disbelief, as she realizes what you're doing. Simple contempt burns in your gaze as you meet her desperate eyes, and without another word, you stomp your boot down on her hand. Her scream is a raw primal thing, torn from her throat as she falls. You watch, detached, as she plummets through the thick polluted air, her body twisting and flailing in freefall. Below, the Simia pause, their misshapen heads tracking her descent. They move as one when she hits the exposed rockcrete at the base of the ladder with a bone-crunching thud, swarming over her like a pack of predators on fresh prey. You watch for a moment longer, hoping she survived the fall, hoping that she was still conscious when the Simia reached her. She deserves to feel every second of what's coming to her. And then, without a backward glance, you continue your climb. In an imperium spanning 1,000,000 worlds and trillions upon trillions of souls, it's all too easy to slip through the cracks. A single misstep is enough to see your life torn away. A wrong word, a sideways glance, or the lack of enthusiasm while choking down your ration of corpse starch, any of these could be enough to cast you aside. Sometimes it's a false accusation, the petty ambition or spite of someone you thought you could trust. Other times it's pure bad luck. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and suddenly you've become an inconvenience that needs to disappear. It doesn't matter why. Guilt is a certainty, innocence is an afterthought. The verdict is always the same. Whether it's exile, servitude, imprisonment, execution, or outright erasure, you are cast out, removed. Others, well, they didn't fall, and they weren't pushed into the cracks either. Rather, they were born in there. Generations deep in filth, where life is short and brutal, where food, water, air, and booze are the only currency that really matters. Children of exiles and the forgotten, born in the dark, raised in a world where the Emperor's light is nothing more than a fairy tale whispered to lull the young to sleep. Their parents and grandparents knew nothing but the gutter, and they, like those before them, will surely die in it. The crack I speak of here is the Underhive, that festering putrid wound rotting beneath the soaring spires of the great imperial hive cities. Down there, the laws of the planetary government, the enforcers, the ecclesiarchy, and the administratum aren't just ignored and disregarded. They are jokes, spat through broken teeth and whispered through air thick with dust and toxins. This is the dark belly of the Imperium, where those who live only do so through stealth, strength, cunning, patience, or sheer desperate luck. The Underhive is an ancient relic, a remnant of humanity's earliest interplanetary colonies established long before the host world's environment was ravaged and exploited. Over millennia, these initial colonies and settlements were built upon and expanded into the treacherous foundation for the sprawling hive above. These cavernous pseudo-cities sink deep into the earth, with depths ranging from hundreds of meters through to dozens of kilometers. Put simply, the Underhive is an unstable, lawless hell where entire generations are born, live, and die in perpetual gloom. Homes, if they can be called that, are cobbled together in the husks of forgotten machines, forged from rusted pipes and warped metalwork. Most of its wretched inhabitants know nothing beyond the narrow corridors and tunnels, the crumbling ruins, the abandoned manufactoria, and the oceans and lakes of toxic chemicals and industrial waste. The more reserved and resourceful inhabitants of the Underhive might be content with farming and cultivating spongy fields of fungus, or scraping glowing algae from the sides of rusting pipes and stagnant pools to sustain themselves. Some might scrape by, hunting bloated rodents and feral shoot dogs that scurry through the ruins, while others, when fortune or disaster favours them, scavenge from the dead in the aftermath of shootouts, raids, floods, or tunnel collapses, stripping bodies of flesh and valuables before the next scavenger arrives to take their chance. To survive in the Underhive is to experience life in its most brutal, raw form. The weak are preyed upon by the strong, and those who are the most desperate become the most dangerous. And who is more desperate, more dangerous than the armed gangs that dominate this world with nothing left to lose, and who are held in check only by their rivals and their competitors? And so, gang law rules. Each day, fresh-faced gangers are fed into the endless cycle of violence and exploitation. Their brief, brutal lives are spent in exchange for a few crates of supplies, a few meters of territory, or the fleeting illusion of safety. The rare shanty towns and barricaded settlements that offer any semblance of order are all too under gang control or influence. Gangs hold the keys to the few functional power sources, they guard the remaining water silos, and control the treasure-filled mountains of surprisingly valuable scrap. The still burning furnaces, the still accessible bridges and thoroughfares, all of it they control. So to live in the Underhive is to live in the shadow of a gang, or alongside one at best. The most practical pledge their loyalty early, aligning with a gang that offers some illusion of protection, stability, or opportunity. Those without useful trades or skills arm themselves with whatever they can scavenge, a rusted knife, a twisted metal rod, a battered autogun, then throw themselves into the gang's service. They join crews tasked with raiding, scouting, scavenging, or take up arms in the constant wars fought between rival gangs, hoping their efforts will keep their gang in power. It's all they have, a desperate gamble that their loyalty might shield them from accusations of worthlessness and, with luck, improve their own miserable situation. For to wander the Underhive alone is to flirt with death and madness. Those foolish enough to go it alone and somehow survive a few days without being murdered, harvested, or killed in any number of ways, crushed in tunnel collapses, drowned in sudden floods, brought low by infection or choked by toxic fumes, often find themselves spiraling into insanity or hideous deformity. Yet, even within the gang, survival is never guaranteed. Loyalty is a fragile, fickle thing, and the threat of betrayal is a daily concern. If one of the crew reckons they've got a better chance at survival, better pay, better gear, or even more opportunity from a rival, chances are that they'll take it. And they won't hesitate to take you and the rest of the crew out in your sleep or lead you into an ambush to seal the deal. Still, a ganger stands a better chance of surviving the night than those who try to navigate the Underhive alone. You could say that, compared to the rest of the base Underhive scum, gangers live like kings. Their weapons might be held together with spit and prayer, but they're still miles ahead of the sharpened fingernails and shattered bottles that the truly desperate cling to. They've got company, sometimes shelter, food, and most precious of all, freedom. Now, I know what you're thinking. Necromunda. You're picturing that blackened imperial-fisted rock floating around in the segmentum solar. You've heard the stories, no doubt, about its enormous hive cities and the never-ending gang wars that tear through its lower levels. And I don't blame you for thinking of such. Necromunda's hive wars are legendary. Escher blade dancers squaring off against Goliath brutes, or Orlok gang lords trading shots with the well-equipped Vansar. It's become the archetype, the perfect, horrific example of hive world chaos and gang brutality. But let me make one thing clear. Necromunda is not really that special. Famous? Sure. Very much crucial to the Imperium's war machine, no question. But when it comes to gang-infested hellscapes, Necromunda is just one of many. Dozens, maybe hundreds of hive worlds across the galaxy are just like it. The names may change, the faces of the gangs might be different, but the desperation, the violence and the corruption, well, that runs just as deep across countless other worlds. So don't get stuck thinking only of Necromunda when one talks about gangers in the Imperium. Picture 1,000 hives, each with their own horrors and each dealing with their own underworld, and remember that for wherever you find a hive, there'll always be an underhive. But what exactly is a ganger? It's easy to throw the word around, but what does it really mean? Are we talking about survivors, desperate souls who cling to life through brute force and savagery, whose only means of survival is to take up arms and rip apart anyone who stands in their way? Or are we talking about gangsters in the more traditional sense, criminals who band together for power, for profit, for the perverse thrill of making their mark in a world that doesn't care or notice their existence? The truth is, it's not a simple question. Ganger doesn't really mean one thing. Rather, it's an umbrella term. When we speak of gangers in the Underhive, or any section of the Hive for that matter, we're talking about an incredible variety of humanity and, well, abhumanity. It's easy to picture gangs as creatures of the depths lurking in the shadows of the Underhive. And that may well be an accurate picture when one seeks to imagine the life of an average ganger. But it's far from the whole truth. Gangers and their crews, in fact, operate throughout the Hive, some even reaching the highest heights of the Great Hive spires. Up there, they wear masks of legitimacy, hiding behind functional businesses, guilds, and political parties. They run extortion rackets in plain sight, cheating planetary taxes, smuggling contraband in and out, and controlling the flow of goods, often with surprising efficiency. The difference, however, is that the Underhive strips away all those disguises. The brutality of desperation is laid bare, and the true nature of gang law comes into full, savage clarity. In the Underhive, the ganger's way of life thrives. Open, unapologetic, and unrestrained by the supposed order that governs the higher levels. And what a way of life it is. Each gang has its own motives, rules, and objectives, lines they'll cross happily and those they won't, their own warped code of ethics or set of standards, but at their core, they're kind of all the same. Scared, hungry, and ruthless in their own way. There are outcast gangs, the ones most think of when they hear the term ganger. Bands of misfits and rejects, people with no place in the civilized layers of the hive, who band together out of necessity or by a shared vision and a common goal. Then there are the tech gangs, machine-obsessed zealots fascinated by the wonders of technology who worship the machine, revere the gun, and pray to the cog, and who often have deep ties to the Mechanicum and the Red Priests of Mars. Then there are the brat gangs, spoiled rebellious noble youth who reject their gilded cages in the spire and jump down into the depths of the hive for sport or as a method of acting out. To them, gang life is a game, or maybe a rite of passage, a way to rebel against their station, to taste the violence of the Underhive without ever truly belonging to it. For when they grow tired of slumming it down in the dark, they can always return up to their mansions, bloodied and wiser for the experience. And then there are the slave gangs, groups of free-range ogrins, the water cartels, the bounty hunter guilds, the mutant war bands, and so much more. There are even sanctioned gangs, gangs with very real, very dangerous power. Those who have clawed their way up from the filth and earned the right to exist openly in the eyes of the planetary government in return for keeping the Underhive in check, stamping out new power brokers before they can threaten the balance of things higher up. As long as they keep the Underhive from tearing itself apart or working its way upwards, they're kind of untouchable. So you see, gangs exist for a million reasons. Whatever is important, whatever offers an advantage, whatever feeds life for the illusion of power, there's a gang there waiting to exploit it. And in the Underhive, nothing is beyond their reach. Whether it's the basics of survival or the twisted luxuries only the truly mad would seek, a gang will control it, ration it, and bleed the desperate dry. Down there, power isn't just something you take, it's something you own. And the more you have, the more desperate everyone else becomes, and that's just the way of things. You need water? Well, there's a game for that. You need bullets? Well, there's a game for that. You need protection? A safe route through the tunnels? Well, you better hope you've got something worth offering, or you're going to become the offering. So, what is a ganger, really? A survivor? A criminal? A soldier, a businessman? The truth is, gangers are all of these things and none. Some are high-ranking bosses, cruel in their command of death squads, and resource hoarders who ration out bare, basic necessities for a premium. Others are just jittery kids who have been forced into a life of violence and who skirt the edges of gang life by running messages or handling petty jobs, all while praying they never draw too much attention or catch a stray bullet. Between these two extremes lies a full spectrum of gangers, some clinging to a shred of respectability, others embracing the savagery as a way of life. In the Underhive, gangs decide who breathes, who drinks, who gets to keep what little they've managed to scrape together. They protect their turf, they tax their underlings, and they punish anyone who steps out of line. Yet, you could say that without the gangs, the Underhive would be worse off. The enforcers and the arbites claim to bring order, but in the depths of a hive, it's often the gangs who fill the void. They maintain a primitive, brutal form of stability, a system of intimidation, fear, and control that holds back total anarchy and even works to occasionally keep rising chaos cults in check. It's a twisted balance, both the disease and the cure. They rule by fear, but without them, the Underhive might well consume itself and the hive above. To align with a gang, no matter how cruel, is often the only way for the average soul of the Underhive to survive. Safety, such as it is, comes with a price. Allegiance to the gang that controls your pipe, your pile of ruins, your irradiated water supply. They offer protection, but the cost is loyalty, servitude, or worse. It's a foul ecosystem, a brutal balance that even the hive lords and the nobility dare not disrupt. For as long as the gangs keep things from collapsing, they're tolerated and sometimes even relied upon. So to be a ganger in the Imperium is to embrace a life on the edge. A life where morality and law have long since decayed under the weight of true desperation. It's to exist in the cracks, in the forgotten places where the rules of the Imperium don't reach. A ganger isn't just a criminal or an outlaw. They may live, they may die, but they will fight and they will scavenge, and they will do so freely because there is no other way. As Mad Donna is rumoured to have said in one of her more lucid moments, "I've seen the truth. I've seen what we are. We're nothing. Less than nothing. But in that nothing, I found freedom. The freedom to do whatever I want, to kill whoever I want, because in the end, nothing matters. Not in this cursed place." For a ganger, death is always close, whether that be a rival's blade, a collapsing tunnel, or the slow corrupting poison of the Underhive itself. But in that fate, there is some twisted kind of freedom. The freedom to live without rules, to take what you can, to fight desperately for each bit of scrap, to shape your own fate with nothing but your two grime-streaked, trembling hands and that big, beautiful brain of yours. Because in the end, that's all a ganger has, and all they can really trust. Anyway, thanks for watching. Dystopian Chimp, out.